Hey everyone, this is Bo. In this video, I build this rolling shop cabinet. It unintentionally acts like a bench, but intentionally it will mount a drum sander on the top. I've recently purchased a Supermax 1938, and I wanted to build a home for it here in the shop. You can see the overall cabinet here has some adjustable shelves. They're adjustable-ish. Once I found their height, or I found a height I liked, I screwed the shelf to the adjustable shelf pins. There's some holes in the bottom, so mounted those so when you're rolling it around it doesn't rattle out. It also has two drawers on the bottom here for storing whatever. Can never have enough storage. And then it has 4-inch locking casters on the bottom. So you can see from the profile here, it's pretty unique. It's kind of shaped like, I guess, two L's back to back. And that shape is really driven from the adjustable, or excuse me, the collapsible in-feed and out-feed supports on the sander. The unique shape also allows it to have a pretty sturdy base, right? The overall cabinet is 36 inches, 36 and a quarter this way, including the edging on there. And it's 30 inches deep, front to back. Yep. Which gives it that large footprint to help with stability since the sander's pretty heavy. Off the ground, it sits 34 and a quarter. This top section is 17 and a half tall by 11 and 3/4 deep. This base also allows to put the drawers in there, but also on the back side it left some space for something unique that will be a little bit of a surprise coming up in the video of what I've put back there. The material used for this is going to be 2 full sheets of 3/4 inch plywood. Basically used every last bit of that, and then probably 3/4, between a half and 3/4 a sheet of 1/2 inch plywood for the adjustable shelves and the drawers. And then I had some leftover walnuts from a coffee table build that I used to trim it out, cover up all the ugly plywood edge. After everything was constructed, it was finished with a coat of shellac and 2 coats of polyurethane to give it some longevity and as well match a lot of the other cabinetry in the shop. That's kind of it for the intro and the overview here. Stay tuned for all the build details of how this thing went together and assembled, as well as stay tuned for the surprise that's in the back of the cabinet. Thanks for watching.
All right, getting started here. As with most of the smaller cabinet projects for the shop, I have Home Depot rough cut the plywood on their panel saw so I can transport it home more easily. And then from there I take it and cut it all to its final dimensions. Here I'm cutting one of the pieces to the overall width of the cabinet, and I'm cutting this to an exact size. And since the width is larger than my table saw can handle, I'm not able to make repeatable cuts on the table saw. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting one piece to the master width, and then I'm rough cutting the rest and flush trimming them with the router to get them all to be the exact same size. Since the depth of the cabinet is under 30 inches or right at 30 inches, I can cut that all on my table saw. From there, I move on to cutting the side pieces, and I'm cutting the kind of that double L shape in them. I start by cutting the straight portions on the bandsaw, and then that angled section I'll finish up with the jigsaw. Alright, now moving on to adding pocket holes. This would be the bottom of the cabinet, getting pocket holes to go into the sides. Pocket hole creep show. And this is the top of the drum sander cabinet, getting pocket holes to also go into the sides. Once I have a dry fit going here with the bottom and the sides, I'm ripping these boards to height so they fit exactly into this space to support the mid shelf. So now I'm moving on to the glue up. I have some clamps, some corner clamps here, and I'm going to get everything lined up and drive some pocket holes in from the bottom This bottom eventually will get covered up by a laminated piece, so you'll actually never see these pocket holes in the very bottom of the piece. Next up, I'm gluing these internal laminations to the sides, and they are flush with the front, and then I just kind of brad nail them, and I might even add a couple screws in there eventually. But these are, like I said before, ripped to the height so that mid shelf sits right on top of these. And now I'm moving on to the divider between the drawers and then the back cubby compartment. This piece was glued to those laminations I just glued in there, as well as to the sides of the cabinet. And now it gets clamped into place and a bunch of pocket holes added to screw to the bottom and to the sides. And now moving on to the back of the cabinet, where I'm laminating on some more 3/4 inch plywood with glue and brad nails. Finally, I'm moving on to this the mid shelf here. This sits on all those pieces I just put in, and then I'm able to clamp it on the front and back. And shortly here, I'll be adding some pocket screws that go from the drawer cavity divider up into this mid shelf. One thing I didn't record was gluing in the vertical piece behind the adjustable shelves. That was purely clamped into place, glued and clamped into place with a bunch of clamps and a caul, just because wherever I would put screws, they'd be visible, so I didn't want to have them visible. And so now I'm moving on to the top of the drum sander cabinet, and this is getting pocket screwed into the sides. I should have added pocket screw holes into the back, so I could have also screwed it into the vertical back of it, but forgot, so I just clamped it into place with glue. And now I'm moving on to laminating the top and bottom. So you can see here, I just kind of clamped it into place and drove some screws in from the bottom. And now I'm going through and flush trimming the top to the cabinet. After a light sand, I flip it over and do the same thing to the bottom of the cabinet, except this is not one large piece, it's actually 3 individual pieces, just so I could get it all out of the 2 sheets of plywood I had. Now I'm moving on to drilling the shelf pin holes, and I'm showing you here that these are offset front to back, so the shelf pin holes don't exactly line up with each other. The shelf pins I have are a little over 3/8 of an inch, so they would interfere if you put them at the same exact height. Now I'm moving on to the walnut edging. I am ripping these all to their approximate thickness. They've already been cut to width. And once I rip them to their approximate thickness, I will run them through the jointer to get them all the same thickness. And now moving on to applying the edging. This was probably the most challenging part of doing the edging for the whole cabinet, were these angled pieces here. Kind of some back and forth between the miter saw, the oscillating spindle sander, and then glue and brad nails to hold them into place once I was happy with the fit. Once the cabinet was trimmed out, I moved on to the drawers, and here I am test fitting the bottom groove for the drawer. The bottoms will be 1/2 inch plywood, as well as the sides and the false front. And so here I'm using the router table and a 15-30 seconds bit to do that. And now I'm moving on to cutting the rabbets in the sides of the cabinet. I like this construction for kind of its ease. You can really dial in the overall drawer width by just cutting the front and back pieces. So once I'm happy with the fit, I'm moving on to the glue up here, using clamps to temporarily hold it in place and squeeze all those rabbets together. And then I come back with a drill and a 1-inch screw and fasten those into place. So the rabbets get reinforced with the screw itself, it doesn't come out. And it also allows you to remove the clamps once you drive the screws in place. Once I get all the screws driven in, I'll flip it on its back, and I'll check for square. And if there's any final tweaks to be made, I can clamp it square and drive screws in through the bottom of the drawer into the back of the drawer. Now I'm moving on to making a jig for the pull. It's going to be just a rectangular notch cut in the drawer front. So here I cut 3 pieces of plywood, pocket screw them together. I traced the line on the cabinet and cut it on the bandsaw, and now I'm coming back with a flush trim router and a chisel. I want to trim out the drawer front, so I have to rip some of the plywood or some of the walnut edging down to 1/2 inch thick instead of 3/4. And similar to the cabinet, I'm working my way around the drawer front and gluing and pin nailing this into place. Those pin nail holes will eventually get filled. So here's something that happens quite a bit in the shop. I've cut it once, twice, glued it in place, thought I had a good fit, and I realized that, what the heck, that's a huge gap, and I take it back off and do it again. And then here's also me forgetting to shut the camera off before I leave the garage for the afternoon. Oops.
I want to take a few minutes and talk about some of the cabinet details and maybe why things are laid out the way they are. So first of all, thinking about the weight of the drum sander itself. Right, the drum sander is going to weigh around 200 pounds. I think the shipping weight's like 250 some or 240 some, and that includes the metal base and probably packing materials and whatnot. So let's just round to 200 pounds. It's heavy. It's going to be pretty high off the ground, right? This cabinet's 27 inches tall, plus about 5 inches for the caster, and then another like 18 to 20 inches for the drum sander. So it's going to be quite a ways off the ground, a lot of weight up there. So it's important that the cabinet have a very stable base, and that's why this cabinet is as big as it is. And those dimensions, the 30-inch depth was kind of driven by the size of the conveyor on the drum sander, and then the width was accounting for most of the length. A little bit of the motor will hang off the one end, but yeah, that was the length of the cabinet there. Some other details to point out, trying to get that mass of the sander down to the ground efficiently without putting any weak spots in the cabinet. So what we have at the base is laminated 3/4 inch plywood. We also have these lower pieces that are laminated 3/4 inch plywood, and the very top is also laminated 3/4 inch plywood. So you got something very heavy at the bottom, doubled up 3/4 inch, and plus something substantial to put the casters into. You also have these sidewalls doubled up to prevent any type of weak spots down here. And then we have this center, I have this center spine that's coming down the middle, and so that's glued and screwed to the top section, glued and screwed to the middle section, and then this is glued and screwed to the middle section and to the bottom. So that helps transfer the load down through the center of the cabinet. Where all these joints intersect, it's like a really big rabbit. If you think we got the bottom piece of plywood going all the way out, and the center and the upper portion of this plywood stops short, and then this outside one comes straight down. There's another one in there, so it makes like a kind of interlocking rabbit here when it's all put together. A lot of glue surface. I wanted to show the side of the cabinet, just give you a profile of what it looks like. So it's actually symmetrical left to right, but this the back of the top section and that lower, the rear of the drawer cavity all line up right through here. And so it kind of offsets all the storage towards one side. But you can get a look of what the shape is, and this allows the drum sander to sit on top. And then I don't have the drum sander yet, but I hope it allows the foldable wings to fold down and nest inside the cabinet. Cross my fingers. So here we are on the back side. You can see this is kind of a smaller cavity on the rear. This panel that you see here, this is actually the other side of the drawer cavity. It's a single piece of plywood here, and this is the back side of that vertical divider on the top. So for this back cavity, it's kind of an odd shape. So it's not really good for a shelf. Could be used for like make little cubbies and just throw stuff in there, but likely it's just stuff that I would just never might be cool, might be kind of dorky, but it's pretty interesting. So I'm gonna try something new and unusual here with the back of this cabinet. Really playing on the word a drum. Hey everyone. So this is what I ended up doing with the back side of the cabinet. I decided to turn it into the shop sound system. It was kind of an awkward space. It was about 10 inches deep, not that great for storage. So I was like, well, I don't have a good sound system in the shop. This would be an opportunity to put one in. So what I have here is a 6.5-inch sub, powered by its own amplifier on the top, and then two 6.5-inch coaxial speakers, powered by that amp and the kind of media input. Overall, it sounds pretty good. I'll give you a sample here in a second. The one thing I am disappointed in is I wanted all the componentry to be behind the edge of the cabinet, so as I was rolling it around or doing whatever with it, the components wouldn't get banged up. Well, that device there on the bottom left, it's a little bit deeper than advertised. As well, I didn't account for the cables coming in out of the back. There's some RCA cables and speaker wires coming out of there. I didn't account for that either when selecting the componentry. So it does stick proud of the edge, unfortunately. So I'll just have to be a little more careful when I'm rolling around. But here you can get a sense of what it sounds like. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out, other than the extra depth of that component down there. Yeah, so keep on watching the rest of the video. Once again, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it.
So here's what the cavities for the various audio equipment look like. On the left is where the the mixer preamp, whatever the heck you call that thing is, where all the inputs go into. And then the sub amp sits on top, and that shelf's just pocket holes screwed in place. And then here's the front, where the speakers will actually mount to, where you have the two coax on the left, the sub on the right, and behind it you can see the three vertical pieces of plywood. That's what the front will attach to with screws. And inside I got some blocking to stiffen up the walls to eliminate, vibrations. And then all that got caulked into place before that front was fastened onto it. Now moving on to flush trimming some of the trim, some of the finishing details here. Before I get into all the sanding, shellac, and polying, which I won't share with you because it's boring. And finally, after I'm done with the polyurethane, it's all dried, I'm moving on to attaching the casters. And I'm being mindful of where I'm putting them, wanting them so they don't stick way past the extent of the cabinet, just because it's so big already. I didn't want the footprint to grow any more than I had to. Now it's time to get the cabinet to the ground. It's pretty heavy, and so we got to stretch out first, and I'm really just letting gravity do the work here and just trying to slow it down. Once it's on the ground, I install the drawers into their space, and I install the adjustable shelf pins into their homes here. One thing I don't show is I do add some screws through the shelf pins up into the shelves. Then I install the audio equipment, and I add the walnut trim pieces in between the different speakers there to cover the screws that are going into the vertical dividers. That pretty much wraps up the installation of all the components within the cabinet. Overall, it turned out really nice. I'll be real happy once the drum sander comes in and it mounts properly and the in-feed and out-feed collapse like I have in my head. I will be releasing a second video once I get the drum sander to show how it all works together. So if you're interested and want to catch that, you might want to subscribe to my channel. So I'll leave you with a few things that didn't make the final cut of the video. Thanks again for watching.
Hi, hon. Hi, hon. Doing the intro for my video. The center here. And so then I don't know how to do that. Hold on. I'm trying to think how I did it now. Damn cough. Let me try that again. Trying to think there's anything else I want to say about this thing.